In this video, we're going to be talking about global variables. So far, in previous videos, especially when we're talking about functions, we've used a bunch of local variables. And while we're not going to get into the details of the difference between those two things so much, you are going to see your first global variable and see how it can be used a little bit differently than what we've used so far. In the previous videos, we talked about variables mostly in relation to functions and having inputs for functions. So right here, I made a function for you called, well, it's an on-mouse press function. And when you click the mouse, we're going to create a star and a circle at the clicked mouse X and the clicked mouse Y. The variables that we're using here, mouse X and mouse Y, these are called local variables because they're existing only inside of this function right over here. This mouse X, it only exists inside of this function. If I try to print the mouse X value right here outside of the function, because it only exists inside, you might say, oh, well, you did it before the function. I could even try printing mouse X, printing mouse X out over here. It is going to give me an error. It says mouse X is not defined, and that's because the program only looks into certain parts, or rather, I should say, this variable mouse X, the way we defined it, only exists between lines 3 and lines 5. It's a local variable. So yeah, let's get on to the point of this. The function that I made right over here, you might have seen in the preview, was when I run it, as I just click, it's on mouse press, I'm going to draw a star, I'm going to draw a circle at the place. Using global variables is, by the way, not really the best programming practice, but we're going to do it for now just because of where we are in our learning of programming. But using global variables is going to let us to, instead of having like these stickers, every single time I call the function, I make a new star. What if I wanted to make something that moved around, right? I had this one star and circle, but as I clicked in different places, it would move it from one place to another instead of making a brand new one. So to do that, we're going to have to make what's called a global variable. So I'm going to make a global variable. Maybe I'll call it my star. If you remember from the previous video, you can name a variable whatever you want. Usually you want to make it kind of descriptive, make it, kind of describe what it's supposed to be doing. So, or at least what it is a little bit. So I'm going to make my star, and I'm going to make it based off of the star that we were working with before. So I'm going to make a star at, I'll start it at 200, 200. I want to keep the same radius and number of points. I'm going to make the fill gray for now, just so you can see the default star as it starts, and then once we update it, it'll kind of turn on. Let's even just see that, right? So if I run this, it makes a star that's gray following all the information I put over there. Notice I made the variable star, but it also drew the star on there, right? It exists in my canvas now, and it's not just printed there, it's also now being stored in the variable my star. And just like in the previous video, how I could say x equals 5 and then do a bunch of stuff with x, and later on in the program switch it to x equals 150, I'm able to go back and edit this star now because I'm able to reference it. I'm able to grab onto it by saying, hey, I gave you a name. You're called my star. I want to come back to you and change things around. So what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to get rid of this line 4, and I'm going to say, instead of making a new star every time, I'm going to say, hey, my star, the variable that I just made, I want to edit you. I'm going to say my star dot. This is called the dot operator. You get your variable name or your object name or whatever, dot, and then you can access some part of it, some attribute of it. We're going to have a video later on talking about lots of different attributes you can get from things, but the most basic one, the only one we're going to be using in this video, is center X and center Y. So what you can do is say, hey, my star, I want to change your X value to be something else. And in this case, I'm going to change it to, well, let's change it to something kind of silly. I'm going to change it to maybe 0. So now when I click, right at the beginning of my program, I made a star and I stored that star into the variable my star. Then whenever I click, I'm going to change my star's x to 0 and then make a new circle at mouse x, mouse y. So let's run this. I made a star. It's there. When I click, it made a circle, but it also edited the star that was already there, moved it over to the edge of the page. Every time I click now, though, just kind of like how we had that issue with our functions from a couple videos ago, since I said my star.center x equals 0, every time I click, it just resets it to 0. It doesn't change it. If instead I change the x value of my star to the mouse x, now we're kind of moving a little bit. So I start it like this. When I click now, the star, its x coordinate is going to follow the x coordinate of my mouse. Now, it's only following the x coordinate because here I only edit the star's my star dot center x. I only change its x. So it's only following the x of my mouse. If I put my mouse, and you can see on the bottom, my mouse is at 200. Put my mouse at 200 and then click. Oops, sorry for smacking the mic there. The star goes to 200 in the x. If I put my mouse up over here at 385 and click, the star's x will be 385. Of course, it's following exactly what I had there. Now, if we wanted it to follow the mouse perfectly, we could go to my star dot center y and set that equal to my mouse y. And now the star is going to follow my mouse. Everywhere I click, the star is going to follow it around. But we have this issue of the circle. The circle, I'm still making the stickers of that circle every time. So we'll do the same thing. Let's fix it. I'm going to make a my circle variable, create the circle, and maybe I'll just actually be a little cheap, cut this out here, paste it there, and we'll start again at 200, and I'll get rid of the fill, so it'll be a black circle at the get-go. Now when I run, I start with the gray star and the black circle inside. When I click now, the star follows my mouse. As I click, it goes exactly where my mouse is because I'm updating my star's x and my star's y to be the mouse x and the mouse y. If I want the circle to do the same thing, well, I can just say my circle dot center x equals the mouse x, and my circle dot center y equals the mouse y. And now we've got the whole thing following my mouse around as I click. Now, the last thing I want to show, and I guess this is really starting to get more into the different attributes that you can change, and we'll learn about all of those and more of those later on, though CMU does a good job of just kind of listing them out. There's not a big concept there. We can also change other things that will only ever change once, right? I could say my star.fill and set that equal to the purple that I had before. So once I click it, it will update the star to change from its fill from gray to purple, and I can do the same thing with my circle.fill and set that equal to cyan. Now when I run it, I have my kind of deactivated star here. As soon as I click, it's going to update the x and the y of the star in the circle, and it's going to update the fill to be purple and cyan. Once I've made it purple and cyan, it's just going to stay that the entire time, but every time I click, it'll be a new mouse x and a new mouse y. I hope that was valuable. The big kind of concept is you can create a variable and have it store an object instead of just a number. And then in functions, or really anywhere inside of your program, you can edit those properties by using the dot operator and just setting it equal to assigning it the value of whatever you want. I hope that was useful if you're having some trouble with the variables, and good luck with it.